Hello, and welcome to Sideways. This week, percentages.
Right, we're rolling.
Well, it's nice to be back around the kitchen. No, it's not the kitchen table.
It's the dining room table.
Yeah. It'd be nice to be back around the dining room table again. What are we going to chat about today? Any ideas? I mean, it is.
I don't know. Have you got anything?
Well, yeah, I have. I want to give you the chance first.
No. There's nothing that's particularly pressing on me. So
you want to react?
Fire away.
You want to react to what I've got to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what I want to talk about this week is percentages.
Right.
Does that mean anything to you?
Well, I know what they are.
Not really. Yeah. Quite.
Yeah.
Okay. I suppose it's not just percentages, but it's the perception of those percentages, and it's. I wonder if I can. I'll just recount a bit of a story that I'd heard. Well, it was actually direct from the guy in one of the groups that he was talking at one time, and I'm still not quite sure. Right, even to this day, whether he was being very clever in what he was telling me and was being sort of covertly disruptive, or whether he actually meant what he was going to say, because he was I think he was cleverer than he made out.
Okay.
But it was quite funny at the time, and the reaction in the group was quite funny. So I just want to run this by you and see what you think of this, okay? Yeah. Because it was a bit of a strange one. This chap, he had come into groups and he was on what they call a DRR, which is a drug rehabilitation requirement. Yeah. They now call them other things as well. There's one specifically for alcohol and that sort of thing. But it was a DRR he'd come in on. And so he was, a lot of people that come into groups under DRRs, they've got obvious addiction problems, but they're being forced to, by the courts, they're being forced to go and address those problems.
Yeah, which we've discussed in the past never works.
We have. And this was one of those guys where, well, when I say it never works, it's very rare. It's very rare. We get one or two who have come through over the years where they've come into groups and actually taken to it and thought, actually, this is not a bad idea after all. Mm-hmm. I am getting some value from this. And I can see there is a better way of life than what I'm doing at the moment. So it's not, we would never discourage people that are on DRRs or any other court-driven reason to come to our groups, because I think there's still value in it. Yeah. But there's also value in what they've got to say as well, and their perception of their addiction and how other people are dealing with it. Mm-hmm. So no, it's not a big success rate. But this particular chap had come in, and he was a funny guy. I really liked him. He was a very cheeky, likeable sort of chap. But which is why I'm not quite sure whether he was just being, I don't know, just being a little bit, just trying to be a little bit funny, or whether he was actually being truthful about this. But what he told me was, he said, when I was running the group at the time, and I said, he introduced himself, and I was going over what his problem was, and he said he was on a DRR, which he said, I can't really understand why I'm on it. I can't really understand, because I don't think I've been that bad a person.
Right.
And I said, oh, okay, what if you don't mind saying, telling the group what happened. He said, well, let me put it this way. I've been out into town with my mates, having a few drinks, probably, he said at a rough estimate, probably, 2,500, 3,000 times. Right. He said, and out of that, I've only been arrested 37 times. And I said, well, okay, yeah, well, it's quite a lot. And he said, yeah, but percentage-wise, that's not that bad, is it? I don't know what all the fuss is about. And I had to sort of think on my feet, and I said, well, I suppose, I can understand where you're coming from, but, I've known, and we know that the statistics show throughout a lifetime, and I had to pick a figure out at this time because I wasn't sure of my ground. So we probably get to know or have some sort of interaction with up to around about 30,000 people in their lifetime. Yeah. I'm not quite sure. I've looked it up since, and it could be considerably higher than that. Mm. And I said, so if I got up in front of the judge and said, look, I've known 30,000 people and I've only murdered one, is that okay?
So your argument is that it's more about severity than it is about frequency?
No, I just think that he was looking at it and thinking that 37 times getting arrested out of 2,500 trips out is not that bad.
Yeah.
And he felt that wasn't really something that the court should have got all that fussed about.
All right. Is there a more is there a more is there a more significant subtext to that, which is I mean, did you feel that he didn't recognise that he had a problem?
That's what I do. That's what, because he could be quite disarming with his charm. I wasn't ever quite sure, but I think he genuinely thought that he was being a little bit hard done by, and he was coming in. He's probably, by his own admission, he was coming there to get the box ticked. That he'd come to groups, and he was going to go back out drinking again as soon as he left.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know. Because he didn't come back, that's for sure, after he'd finished his 6-week course. I don't know whether he did go back out drinking or whether that was just something he wanted to say, or whether, in fact, at the end of that 6 weeks period, he did, in fact, end up going to jail. I'm not sure what happened on that one.
Right.
But it was...
It sounds as if it would have been quite surprising if he had gone out and led a teetotal life.
I'd have been very surprised.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised.
What impact did that have on everyone else
on the group? Well, I had to quickly move on, because at that point it's almost if he's saying, well, it's going to be okay to drink, I'm off out, mate. But I think a lot of people did see that being arrested 37 times as a consequence, they're all for drunk and disorderly and bad behaviour whilst under the influence. They saw that probably wasn't, if he did go back out, it wouldn't be long whether he's going to be arrested again and probably back in jail. So they could see it was leading to a life of constant crime. So I don't think that there wasn't too negative an effect on the group. But we don't really like people coming in that aren't striving for abstinence. But it takes all sorts, and sometimes it just takes a while to filter those people through the system, and you get the people that do want to take it seriously come out the other end.
Yeah, because thinking about any sort of destructive behaviour in terms of percentage, you could probably justify pretty much anything, can't you? So, if you look at the sort of destructive behaviours that someone gets into through their abuse of alcohol or their abuse of drugs or their gambling, there might only be one or two significant destructive events that have happened in their life, but they might be catastrophic. So applying a percentage to that really doesn't make any difference, does it? It doesn't tell the whole story of the problem.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it wasn't. I don't think it was a defence that stood up very well in court. That's for sure.
Do you think he might have tried that in court?
I don't know. I think his defence lawyer would probably have argued against him using that.
Or suggested that it probably wasn't in his best interest.
It wasn't in his best interest. But I think it's interesting. If he was being serious, his perception towards events and how other people's perception towards those same events were quite different.
Yeah.
What you can remember is that some of the people that come into groups, a lot of people won't have criminal records or don't have periods where they've been locked up or have been in trouble with the law at all in some cases. So those people would have found that quite shocking, that to get arrested 37 times. But I think, if he'd been out 37 times and been arrested every time, it would have been a problem. But if he'd gone out 1,000 times and been arrested 37 times, he's still been arrested 37 times. You know what I mean? And that's really where the focus. You try to shift the focus away from that. So to be honest, it's shifting the focus is very much an addict's way of dealing with stuff anyway.
Well, go on. What do you mean?
I think that we try and shift the focus away from ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
I know when I first went to some AA meetings before I'd even gone into recovery, so I was still drinking, I would go there and look for someone that was drinking more than me.
Yeah.
And so I could then, my perception was then, I can't be an addict because there's people a lot worse than me. So
people say that to me all the time when they come in with addiction problems. They'll say, "I know I'm not an alcoholic because I don't drink in the morning,"
Okay.
Or "I know I'm not an alcoholic because I don't drink every day."
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a real problem with that argument.
Yeah, very much so.
Because again, it's a bit like the percentage argument. You're only looking at the part of the story that it suits you to look at. The fact is, even if you don't drink every day, if you go out and get slaughtered on a Friday night and you're on a bender until Monday morning and you end up causing all manner of havoc, you have got a problem with drink.
So what do you say to these people? Just interested. What do you say if someone comes into someone you've met for the first time or meeting for the first time, they come in to see you and they say, "I think I've got a drink problem or a drug problem." Mm-hmm. What do you say next to them?
I say, okay. Well, actually, I mean, it might seem like a very sort of a kind of ridiculously insipid response, but actually, I think what I find is that when people are offering you that information, the one thing they don't want is an extreme response.
I was going to say because I'd imagine that by not making a big deal out of that, you're not making a big deal out of that issue. I mean, you tell me. I mean, is it unusual if someone would come in with that as an opening gambit? Would they ever say that from the outset?
Yeah, some people do. I think what people are more likely to do is they're more likely to come with a particular problem, anxiety, relationship difficulties, anger, and then in the telling of their story, it will be often thrown in as an aside. Oh, I think I'm probably drinking too much, and I'm probably doing a bit too much coke, or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, some people will come. Some people will be very open about the fact that they feel like they've got a dependency on something, and they want to talk about that. And then it kind of reverses, and then they'll talk about the other problems that they're having that they are in their mind connecting to the addiction or the dependency or whatever. So I think people tend to venture into that area in lots of different ways. But as I say, the thing they don't want, when they feel as if they've told you something that they might feel ashamed of or guilty about or worried about in some way, they don't want you to say, "Oh, tell me all about it," or "No, I don't suppose you're an alcoholic," or they don't want that. They want neutrality, so that they have the kind of space to be able to tell their story.
That's your perception of that, I'd imagine. I don't know how they would see that. I mean, they would see it. I mean, if I was going to someone like yourself and had a drink problem, I'd be wanting to go to see someone like you so that you could cure my addiction problems. Do you get people come in that say that? Because early on, that's what I would have thought. Okay, well, can I get back to just being a normal drinker by a bit of psychotherapy?
Oh, yeah, people often do that.
Right, okay.
People often do that, and actually, so sometimes people will come and they'll want that. Sometimes people want to be told that they don't have a drink problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite common. And although I don't do so much of it these days, when I did more hypnotherapy, that was a classic. People wanted to come along to be kind of, can you hypnotise me not to want to drink anymore? Like I'm some sort of Darren Brown, and then they worried that I was going to make them, cluck like a chicken, or eat an onion thinking it was an apple. Yeah,
well, that does scare me, all that. I must admit, I can understand their reticence about that, certainly. Yeah. But do you ever get people? I mean, I'd imagine that the hangover from, at one time, hypnotherapy was a great way to give up smoking. And I'd imagine, that a lot of people thought, well, if I can be hypnotised to give up smoking, I can be hypnotised to give up drinking. Where do we stand on that one?
Well, to me, they're kind of their roots are fundamentally different. In fact, I can remember quite recently having quite an elongated Twitter argument with a guy who was a hypnotherapist in Canada and made great play of trying to get addicts into his clinic to cure them with his hypnosis.
What?
Now, I mean, my feelings on that. I believe that's unethical practice.
We share those views, certainly.
Because I think with addiction, there are always kind of deeper rooted reasons why someone has developed that dependency. It's not quite the same with smoking. When you start to investigate people's reasons for smoking, although people's reasons are always different, they tend to centre around the same sort of stuff. It's like they feel like it's a way of relieving their stress or dealing with, emotions that just feel a bit uncomfortable. There's a big difference between that and I think what people are doing with addictive behaviours like drinking and taking drugs or gambling, where they're actually trying to either fill a hole that they have in themselves or they're trying to block out great swathes of emotion that they just don't have any way of dealing with, and I think that's the kind of fundamental difference between the two. I mean, it's interestingly, I think when you go into to rehab, if you are going in for detox for drugs, you have to not drink as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you're still allowed to smoke, aren't you?
Yeah, you are, and it's exactly right. Because I know if you look at the percentage, and going back to the percentage thing we were talking about right at the top of this podcast, percentage-wise, if you look at the society at the moment, we know that the smoking percentage, or the percentage of the population that smoke is dropping quite significantly, and it has done over the years. We know that it's net down below 20% now, and it's continuing to fall. And when you look at the amount of people that are in addiction, in recovery, that percentage is nearer 80%, which is an incredible difference. And it's quite strange because we see this all the time, and we did do a little bit of research on that as to the percentages being that high. So I can say those figures quite categorically because we did a bit of research on them and talked to a lot of people about it, because we were quite concerned, and certainly I was concerned because I was still smoking when I went into recovery, that you do all the hard work getting yourself straight in the head and straight in the mind, and you're getting yourself straight, your health is starting to get better. You've taken away this real toxic thing out of your life with the alcohol and the drugs, and you're continuing then to put your health at risk by smoking. And that, but a lot of people in recovery, they rely on smoking quite heavily initially. Smoking and coffee is something which you rely on a lot. And I know when I first went on my rehab course with the Kenwood Trust, it was like a rehab in the community course that I did. In the meetings, we weren't allowed to have coffee, and we weren't allowed to smoke until we was off the premises and in our own time. But generally speaking, I found that was quite hard, because when I was actually away in detox, they actually had a smoking room. It shows you how long ago it was, because times have changed there. They did actually have a smoking room in which you could walk into and you could barely see above halfway up the wall. Yeah. Because the smoke used to hang heavily in there. But most of the people, there's very few non-smokers in the rehab centre there.
I mean, so I'm not sure whether you're saying you feel that smoking should be included in. Do you think it should be included in detox then?
No. No, not particularly, but I think it should be part of. We always say trying to give up everything at once is really tricky.
Yeah.
You tackle one thing at a time. We get a lot of people come in, and after the first 6 to 8 months of recovery, they're very keen on looking at other aspects of their health. It tends to be around about that time, between that and a year into recovery, other aspects come into play. Now we get some people that may have weight problems, either where they've had eating disorders in the past, or in fact we've got people coming that are overweight, and it's at that point in their recovery they start to look at other aspects of their life.
Yeah.
So we don't tend to try and force them or try to encourage them to tackle anything other than their specific addiction they're coming in with at that point. And then you can gradually knock off these other bits as time goes by. You start to take too many things all on at one go, it all tends to collapse around your ears, and you'll end up going back to your original drug of choice because you can't deal with what's happening elsewhere.
So it's possible, isn't it, that actually where we started this conversation talking about percentages and using percentages in a kind of destructive way,
yes,
or a way that fits your worldview, perhaps the most valuable use of percentage in terms of recovery is to consider trying to improve 1% every day. Trying to continue on a constant program of improvement. So, when you stop using or you stop drinking, that's an improvement. You don't have to do everything at once. And then as time goes on, you start knocking off the various different parts of your life that you feel are destructive.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I think, it'd be difficult to actually pin down what a 1% increase is each day or progress each day. But
just as a notional
amount, I think
you're being a bit pedantic there.
I enjoy that, to be honest. Thank you.
Clearly.
I think if you are making progress, again, going back to sort of the early part of recovery, most people have this like a purple cloud in the first few weeks of recovery, where everything's starting to look rosy and everything's brilliant, and you're on a big fluffy cloud, and it does start to tail off, and it does flatten out at some point. But I think when you get to those points where you feel you are starting to flatten out, it's when you need to move on to the next thing, which is exactly when people start to look at other aspects that are like perhaps giving up smoking or controlling their eating or doing something else about what's been happening, but if their living conditions or their relationship, etc. It's a great time of to deal with those things.
Yeah. So how far into your recovery was it when you decided to stop eating chocolate buttons in bed?
Stop eating chocolate buttons in bed. You're going back to one of our previous podcasts on that one, yeah. But it's a nice one to drag up. I think it was probably about that time, actually. 6 to 8 months in, yeah.
Yeah.
I would have still lent on chocolate a little bit at the start. In fact, I still do now to a certain extent, but I do.
Is it something you want to talk about?
I'm not in the psychotherapist chair, am I right now? I think that it's a very common factor that people that are coming out, certainly off of alcohol, because of the high sugar content in alcohol, you go into recovery and you suddenly stop drinking. The craving for sugar is immense. We get most people come in almost like have secret stashes of Haribo and that sort of thing because there's this craving for sugar. And that is something which does die down. So although I do eat chocolate now, it's nothing like the amount I used to when I first went into recovery. And suddenly the craving was overwhelming. Mm. And but we do tend to find that I can understand why that works with alcohol because of the sugar content. But we tend to find that people coming off of opiates, particularly heroin, do tend to have this need for it as well. Haribo is a big favourite amongst the opiates. It actually
sounds a little bit like heroin.
It does sound a bit like heroin, but it is one of the favourites of your opiate user.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you reckon there's anything in the similarity of name?
I suspect
you're attracted to.
I think we're probably looking for something that isn't there, but I like the idea.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
So we're happy that with the percentage then. I think that's sort of we might have strayed off a point a little bit there, but I think we come across some interesting things, haven't we? There,
I think so.
Some reasonable points to discuss.
I'd say it was 51% good.
51% good. Okay.
See you next week.
Does that mean you're a glass half full, man? Does 51% count as half full? Just over. It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm happy with the other 49. We're settled on that, shall we?
Excellent.
Wicked.
See you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work, visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways. You can follow us on Twitter and you can email us to let us know what you think of the show and anything else that you'd like to tell us or if you have any questions you'd like to ask us. Thanks for listening, and if you've enjoyed what you've heard, we'd be really grateful if you'd tell someone about it. And we'll see you next week.